So there was a time period in my YouTuber career, such as it is, that I did a lot of first look distro reviews, whatever you want to call them. And I got bored with that fairly quickly, simply because there's only so many times you can look at an Arch-based distro and not just say, well, that's an Arch-based distro, or look at a Debian-based distro and say that's Debian, but with a better install process, and that's all they've done to it. It just kind of repetitive, and I got bored with it. But today, what we're going to do is a first look at a Debian-based distro. And you're asking, well, Matt, what makes this any different than all the rest? Well, it is fairly different, and I think that merits an actual video. So we're going to take a look today at PikaOS. Now, this is a distribution that if you were to use it, you would find is based on Debian SID, or Debian testing. It's based on a custom kernel, which we'll talk more about later. It's installed on Btrfs, which is very interesting given the fact that there are very few distributions out there that actually use Btrfs as their file system. And it has a few very interesting tools that they've created to make it look interesting and set itself apart from other distributions. So we're going to take a look at PikaOS today. Now, just keep in mind that this is not a long-term review at all. I've only used it for a few hours. So if I've missed something or I've mischaracterized something, just know that that's the reason why. This is the very first look of this distribution, so just keep that in mind. But before we jump in, if you leave a thumbs up on this video, I'd be really appreciative. It'd really help the channel. So let's take a look actually first at the installation. Now, what you're going to see here is B-roll of me actually installing this for the first time. And overall, the installer is very good looking, it's well designed, and it's fairly intuitive. Now, there were a couple spots there where I had some issues because they were just different than what I expected. So you choose your language and you choose your keyboard layout and all that stuff, just like you would in every Linux distribution installer. And then you get to the partitioning manager where it's a little bit different. So you'll see it asking you whether or not you want to install it with the automatic partitioning system or do it manually. The manual one, I went into it for just a second. You'll probably see it in the B-roll. That was super confusing. I don't know how anybody would actually be able to use that. Now, I didn't spend enough time in there to figure it out, but it looked kind of confusing. So I went back to the automatic installer and had to figure out that it's on the second page where you're actually choosing the disks that you want to partition. It wasn't really made all that clear. It did have a blinking light, so I should have been able to figure that out. But there's like a blinking section there where you click on that, then you can click the drive. It's not the traditional way of partitioning that I'm used to, and I think that's what kind of threw me off. But other than that, it's just kind of the basic PopOS elementary OS type installer. I don't think that they're the same, but it's the idea where you select certain settings for your system before installation, you create your user after installation. Several distros have begun doing that nowadays. This is another one of those. I did notice that it was fairly fast to install once you got through the setup process, so that's a point in its favor. So let's then move on to the first boot experience. Now, this was a little bit weird for me, not because the process was weird, but because there was another reboot that you had to do. So in order to use the system, you come to this screen. You're in GNOME already. It asks you to create a user, which is fairly standard process for this type of distro. You create your user, and then instead of just popping you into GNOME like all the rest of them seem to do, it actually asks you to reboot again. It was a little jarring to me. Not that big of a deal, but it's still something that I noticed. So when you're actually on your second boot, you're presented with a welcome screen. And we're actually I have some B-roll that I'll share with you here in a few minutes of my doing an update and installing the codecs. But first, let's just take a look at the welcome screen so you guys can actually see this. And we're going to go and do this live. So this is PikaOS. This is their default wallpaper. Their mascot is a bird. That's the reason why they've chosen the birds. I'm not sure if the chickens have noticed, but there is a cat somewhere in this picture, and they should be wary. The ninja there at the top should definitely be worried about all this stuff. So anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at the welcome application for PikaOS. So you're greeted with this, and then you have a list of setup steps. Now, the first thing I did was go here and click the update system. I'll show you that B-roll now. The only real interesting thing here, at least that we need to talk about right now, is that they've created their own updating application. So if you were to launch an update through this application, you'll be able to see a different UI than what you'd normally be after. And it's cool, but as you'll notice during the update, it kind of jumps all over the place as the text or the path to the thing that it's installing changes size. So it's like up and down, up and down, up and down. That was kind of annoying. I wish they just set a bigger window so that it fit all the URLs to the updates. That way the UI wasn't shaking all over the place. But other than that, the UI is very nice. I enjoy the fact that not only do they help you install or update via apt, but they also do it for Flatpaks as well, so you can kind of update your entire system all at once. I will say that if it should be able to have an option there for when there are no updates, for you to have just a way to get past the updater, because it actually only allows you to accept it or decline, and if there are no updates and you click accept, it still does what it should do. It's just weirdly named or weirdly labeled or whatever. So I would say have them check to see if the amount of updates available for Flatpak at least is 0, in which case they should just close the window or offer a confirmation screen or a summary screen or whatever there. That'd be great. The next thing in the B-roll that you guys will actually see is me trying to install the patented media codecs and libraries, which is this thing here. So we'll put that B-roll up now. This here was a little slow, but I'm not sure that it was actually slow. Let me explain. So you click on the launch button here, and it will come up with a pop-up that says running. And it's like, okay, but it's sat there for quite some time. Now, I don't know whether or not I'll be able to put this in at full speed or not. We'll see. But it sat there for a good minute and a half, maybe even longer than that. And I was like, what's going on here? Because there was no progress. Well, it turns out that it needs administrative privileges in order to run that. And the administrative privileges, the Polkit agent, or whatever they're using, was popped up underneath the other pop-up. So I didn't actually see it until there at the very end, where I had to click on it and then enter my password. So their layering there was a little bit off, but not that big of a deal, only it did take me a while to notice. So this might be perfectly well in terms of timing, like it might be fast enough, but it wouldn't carry on until I put the password in, and I didn't do that for quite some time, so it felt slow. Here on the same screen, it does allow you to set up printer support, install the open drivers. Now, one thing I didn't mention earlier is that the GNOME ISO is not actually the only ISO that they have available. They also have one for KDE, Hyperland, and Neri. But also, in addition to all of those, they also have NVIDIA-based ISOs for each of those desktop environments or window managers. So if you do need the proprietary NVIDIA drivers, you can get that ISO right from the beginning without having to install the NVIDIA drivers post-install. That's really nice. So you can install the open source drivers from here if you choose to do that, if you didn't choose the ISO with the NVIDIA proprietary drivers on them. So the next thing here is something that is very interesting, because not very many distros have a kernel manager. Manjaro does it. Several other more customized distros do this. Pika is the only Debian-based distro I know that does this, other than like maybe MX. I'm thinking maybe there's one or two that I haven't actually tried, but this is like one of the few that I know for sure does it, and it's Debian-based. So this tells you what's running, what's the latest stable version, and it also allows you to download a whole bunch of other ones. So if you want to download a different kernel, you can do that. You can see which ones are installed with the little check. You can also go down and choose any different one, like an older version, a release candidate. I'm assuming that the LTS ones are here as well, but they don't seem to be labeled. Maybe I'm just not scrolling far enough for that. But you can still install whatever kernel you want. So because you're on Debian, usually that means that you're not going to be on the latest and greatest kernel. You are on Debian SID, so you should have something a little bit more up to date. With this allows you to install your kernel however you want in terms of the versioning. So you can jump to the next RC when it comes out if you want. You can do whatever your system needs. So this is one of those rare Debian distros that you could probably use with brand new hardware, because you're going to have access to the latest kernel. You can also, if you're always downloading a different kernel, uninstall older kernels directly from this UI. So if you want to get in here and clean up some things, you can do that as well. You can also install more apps from the software manager. We'll take more look at that. It's just going to be the GNOME software manager, I believe. And you can install some web apps. These are going to be self-created. So if you wanted to create one of, say, a Mastodon client that doesn't have an actual app, or Twitter, or whatever you wanted to do, you could do that from here. The recommended additions is just basically their curated application list, but also they have some packages grouped together that you could install. What they're trying to emulate here is a gaming based distro, something similar to Bazite or something like that. So it allows you to install things like the gaming utilities extras, and the device configuration for a lot of controllers. All that stuff is right up front, so if you want to use this as a gaming distro, quote unquote, you can do that. They don't install it out of the box, which I find interesting given that they've wanted to create something like this. So they are giving that option, which I think is nice. Additionally, here they have some recommended apps like Kdenlive and LibreOffice. None of that stuff is pre-installed out of the box. If you want that stuff, you'll have to install it, which is, I think that's the best way to do it. They offer you the option to do so without forcing it on you and creating an ISO which is absolutely humongous. Now, this ISO here, the GNOME version, I believe was like 2.4 gigabytes. I did download the KDE version. I didn't try it. I think that was in the 3s. So they don't have the smallest ISO ever, which leads me to believe that some of the stuff that they're using is in the background, but because they don't have a ton of applications installed, but they still don't have like a 5 gigabyte ISO, which they would have if they installed a lot of this stuff. Now, here's something interesting. You can also configure GNOME a lot through the Welcome application, and all these applications, by the way, are available in the menu as well. So, like the GNOME Appearance application that they've created, which we'll talk more about here in a second, is available in the menu system, so you don't have to use it from the Welcome app. So the configure GNOME here is just GNOME tweaks. You can also use the GNOME Extension Manager to add extensions, but what's most interesting is this one. So this one here allows you to change the appearance of GNOME to very specific pre-made configurations. So you can do traditional 11, which is based on like a Windows 11, Pineapple, which is basically a Mac, GNOME 2, which is older, and Unity, all that stuff. Now, I will put up a screenshot here in a second. Take it from me when I say don't switch to one right after another. You can do a couple and it seems to work fine, but if you do all of them one right after another, it breaks. They just kind of appear on top of each other. That's what this particular screenshot is showing you. But I'm going to switch to just one so you guys can actually see this work. And it does bring up the Unity type thing. Now, I will say that what's really annoying is that if you switch to these, you get these pop-ups, and this isn't a Pika problem. Like, this is from the extension, and this just doesn't go away. It just stays there forever until you click either don't show again or close it. You know, and that's the problem is that if I were to switch back to GNOME and go back to the regular one and then go back to Unity, it actually comes up again. Now I could actually click don't show again and it won't come up again, but the fact that if I then go switch to, say, for example, 11, I'll actually get another pop-up. Like, it actually still showed it to me again. That is not okay, right? But that's an extension problem from an extension developer, not Pika's problem. But still, it can be quite annoying to see that pop up every single time you switch to a different layout. So I like that they have this, though. I like that they have the ability to change to a different layout without you having to do the options. It does mean that when you open up the extension manager, you see that there's actually quite a few extensions here already installed. Go away, all these damn pop-ups. Oh my goodness, there's another one. There's like one pop-up after another. Anyways, you can see that there are quite a few system extensions installed. Now, what's interesting about this, and my biggest problem here, is that you can't get rid of them. Like, there's no, well, there probably is, like, in the background, you can probably go delete a file, or you can get into Deconf Editor or something. But from this UI, like, if you wanted to uninstall Arc Menu, you can't do it. Like, it's not an option. So by having them set as system extensions, they remove the ability for you to delete them completely. You can disable them, but you can't just get rid of them, which is, I think, a little bit of, it's not great from a user perspective, I don't think. But maybe that just bugs me and bugs nobody else. So there's that. So that's the Welcome application. The rest of it's all about support and stuff. So we're going to actually go take a look at the application menu. So this is the application menu, and there's a few things here that are interesting. So the APX thing was the thing that caught my eye first, because, like, what is APX? I actually had to look it up. So APX is a thing that was created by Vanilla OS that allows you apparently to use different package managers on your system. Now, I haven't figured out how to use this yet, so I'm not going to say whether it's good or bad. It's interesting that it's here. I will say that. I don't know that it's well documented enough to be here or not. Like, if this is something that they want people to actually use, I don't know if a new user will know what a subsystem or a stack is. They'll know what a package manager is probably, but the rest of this doesn't have any documentation whatsoever. So if you go up here, there's no help. It's just about, you can go to the website, which just takes you to the front end website. So this is just the front end for APX. You'll have to then go search for APX itself in order to get the actual documentation for that, and none of this is great, right? If this is something people are actually meant to use, I really wish that there was more documentation or help to do it. Now, it's possible that on PikaOS they have documentation for that here. I haven't gone through their documentation extensively, so it might be here and I'm just missing it. So just keep that in mind, that this is a first look, not extensive. So like I said, you can get to the GNOME Appearance application from this menu as well. The one thing I don't see is the ability to change the kernel from here. So that might be buried somewhere else. Or maybe it's a part of another application. I don't... Oh, actually, it's right in front of my face. It's literally right there. Okay, so just ignore me. Anyways, they also have this software updates repository thing. Now, this is the ability to manage your apt sources, if that's something that you need to do. So if you add PPAs or things like that, those would be listed, I believe, here as well. They do have Synaptic Package Manager, so you can install Debian packages with that. That's cool that that's here. Other than that, this is a fairly minimal distro in terms of what's actually here. You have the GNOME stack, so things like clocks, weather, contacts, photos, all that stuff. The one thing that I noticed they did remove, I believe, is GNOME Web, which is just like the best, most hilarious thing ever, because that's... every time I encounter a GNOME distro that has GNOME Web as like their default editor, I'm looking at you, Elementary OS. I'm like, what are you guys doing? These guys did the right thing. They have Firefox as their main browser, and that's what it should be. So that's great. So this is their main updates page. Now I showed you me doing an update for the first time back earlier with some B-roll, but you can get back to this by clicking on this icon here. It does take you to a different page. So if you may end up on this page here by default. We just saw this a minute ago, but the main update application actually is in the same application. It's just the front page, and it's not, I don't know if it's default or if it just happens to be that I clicked on something. But in order to update, you just click commit apt and Flatpak upgrades. It would then take a second, it would check for things, it would tell you how many are there, confirm or accept, and it will just say that there's nothing there, and it's just 100%. So once the app stuff done is then takes you to the Flatpak thing. So I click on accept, it does the exact same thing. There's nothing actually here because I've already done all this stuff, and then it's done. So they've created this update manager, and I think that that's cool. They have enabled automatic check for updates, so you can choose how often apt checks for updates here. The problem here is that it doesn't give a unit. So I'm assuming that this is probably 6 days, not 6 hours, but there's no real way to know. It just says automatically check for updates, automatic check interval, which is this. I mean, those are the same, I believe, unless I'm missing something. And then it just says 6. 6 what? 6 days, 6 minutes, 6 hours? I don't know. It doesn't actually label it. So that's interesting there to be as well. It will also check all of the repositories that you have enabled. By default, it's just the apt repository and probably anything that usually comes with SID, and that's would be listed in your sources file, if you know what I'm talking about there. So you can probably add other ones the more traditional Debian way, or you can use this application here. So that's updates. So there's a couple things here that I'm interested in. So if we go to the terminal, you'll notice that Snapper is not set up. Now, apparently Snapper is installed. It's just not set up properly out of the box. This is actually fairly disappointing for me because it means that people can't just do a rollback. They have to set it up first, which is something that requires user interaction. So if I do all of my stuff on Pika and I'm using it and then something happens and I want to do a rollback, if I didn't take the upfront measure and buy the insurance of setting up Snapper out of the, for myself, I'm screwed. So I really wish they'd just do that, because that'd be way better. But they don't. But they do give instructions on their wiki on how to do that. So you have to make sure that your Boot partition is labeled PikaOS, which I'm assuming it probably is by default, but I'm not sure if that's the case. You can't be using Lux, which is not surprising. Btrfs encryption never really works well. And you cannot be using UKIs with secure boot. So secure boot kind of has to be disabled. Again, not that surprising. And then you just do all of these things in order to get them set up, which is fine that they've done this, but I really wish to just do this by enabled, or over here in the welcome application, give me a button to do it. Like, there should be a button here somewhere that says, here, set up Btrfs snapshots, or set up timeshift, whatever. Timeshift isn't even installed. So they don't use timeshift. They could if they wanted to, but they don't. They've chosen Snapper. Like, Snapper's here. Like, one of the options here isn't color me stupid because I don't know how to read. So actually, Snapper isn't installed. It's right there in plain black and white, Matt. So you do actually have to install Snapper too. So, like I said, I really wish they would do this out of the box. Like, you've chosen Btrfs. Why choose Btrfs if you're not going to use its primary feature? It doesn't make sense to me. So there's that. The documentation is actually fairly good. So you can go to the installation wiki. It's not very well combined, so like they have different wikis for different things. So they have different guides here that you can go through. Things like the Hyperland guide, the Neri guide, Secure Boot guide, all this kind of stuff. It's all kind of segmented into different places, but you can use the search box up here if you know what you're searching for. So it's good that they have the documentation available to you, and it is better than a lot of distros do documentation. So that's great. Let's see if we can find something about the APX thing. Nothing. There's absolutely nothing about APX here. So once again, they've installed a program that they have no documentation for. Now, Vanilla OS has something called APX, which I'm assuming is the same thing. And this is where I learned what little I know about it from. So it allows you, as such, installing packages and root partition is possible using AB root, but this approach isn't ideal and recommended as the root partition is small and blah, blah, blah. APX is a package manager created by the Vanilla OS team, also by the guy who did DistroBox. Unlike traditional package managers, APX design eliminates the barriers between different Linux distributions and package managers, allowing you to install packages from any distribution without leaving Vanilla OS. In which case, we're going to use, assuming that it's the same here in PikaOS. So let's say, for example, we wanted to install. Let's actually see if this works. So we'll go back to our terminal here and do APX dash Pikman, like so. Let's just see if that will work. I think that it was dash dash, not just dash. Okay, so we'll do dash dash Pikman, and then we'll just say install. Let's say Audacity. Unknown command Audacity for APX. Okay, so what we do wrong there? Apparently that's not. It just doesn't work. See, that's what I'm talking about. Like, and I had to go to another distro for what little that was, and it still didn't work. Again, I'm probably doing something wrong, but if you don't tell me how to do something, I'm not going to be able to do it. So I don't know if they're looking at that as a primary feature, or I'm just being a moron. It's possible that I'm just being a moron, and there's more to it, and I'm just not doing it right. That's fine. Not that big a deal. I was just curious if we could get that to work while we're still doing this. So the kernel that they're using promises to provide better gaming out of the box, excellent performance is what they say, high compatibility for applications because it's based on Debian SID, and several other tweaks to the kernel that allow them to improve said performance. So we've seen distros like this before. So things like I believe Garuda did a kernel that was separate from everything else. I might be misremembering that. But there are several other distros that have created their own kernels. And those kernels sometimes succeed and become like bigger kernels than just the distribution that offers them. Sometimes they don't. Now, I don't particularly have a problem with custom kernels. I think that it's cool. I do believe that it's a lot of effort, and I applaud them for that. What worries me more is the stability of the distro itself. And I'm not talking about stability as in using it. I just mean like 10 years from now, is this thing still going to be here? Or 5 years from now? So when you rely on someone else to create the kernel that you're using, you then have to trust that it will be there and be maintained for a long period of time if you're going to use this for quite some time. So that's a little bit of a worry for me, but we have to give them some benefit of the doubt and just know that they've created this once and have created obviously multiple versions of it. Therefore, we can trust them a little bit. So just keep that in mind going forward. But other than that, I don't really have any qualms about it now. Okay, so this is Matt. from the future. I'm breaking in just a little bit because there's a part of this that I didn't cover that I should have. So first off, the APX stuff that I covered earlier is kind of moot. I left it in because I can see how other people beyond me get a little bit confused by it because of the lack of documentation surrounding that particular application. But really what they've done is they've built that APX functionality into their own package manager called Pikman. Now, Pikman basically does all the stuff the app does, along with the ability to do stuff like install stuff from Arch, Fedora, Alpine, and Flatpak. Now, I had my doubts about actually covering this because honestly I haven't been able to get to work. So I tried to install Flatpak, I tried to install Audacity from the Fedora repositories. It got this far, it created the subsystem, and then it tried to install it and I got an error. It didn't tell you what error it was, it just says it exited status 1. What that means or how you're supposed to fix it, I don't know. Now, maybe again, this is just me doing something wrong, which is 100%, 1,000,000% possible, but that wasn't a good first experience. But the idea here is that you can do Pikman updates like so. I think that's what I'm supposed to use. Yep, Pikman updates. Okay, see, this is what I'm talking about. This is really weird because upgrade. See, I can't actually read. Reading is really, really hard, guys. Okay, so that should be upgrades. That's going to show you the updates that are available, which apparently there are none, which is odd because I recorded the video that you guys just watched basically several weeks ago. There should be some updates, but I'm assuming I probably have to refresh the repository. So we'll do Pikman update like so. That'd be like the sudo apt update, and then I get more errors. So all right, so I don't know what's going on, but the idea here behind Pikman is that it's a replacement for apt. If you try to do apt, like so, I believe it's going to just go and do what it needs to do. But it came up with the same errors. Now, I have seen while using this sometimes where it'll tell you, if you try to use apt, it'll tell you to just use Pikman instead. It will give you a warning. So there's some situations where that seems to happen. Others where it seems to allow you to do whatever. I'm not sure what this error is. It's probably a Debian error of some kind or an internet error of some kind. So I will just assume that it's not PikaOS and it's just my machine acting up. But the idea behind Pikman, again, is just that it's a replacement for apt, but it also allows you to do all the APX stuff, allowing you to install applications from other places and allows you to do upgrades and updates and searches and all that stuff from multiple repositories. So that's kind of the reason why they've created Pikman, I believe. And I think that that's pretty cool. Now, I have obviously had some issues with it, but again, I'm not going to blame them for this because there's a good chance that this machine is just broken. So I'm going to pass it on back to past Matt, who has some conclusions for you guys. Enjoy. I think that I would be sitting here saying, wow, this is an awesome distro and you should use it if you're interested in using a Debian-based distribution based on SID and has a bunch of other qualities to it. But I don't think I can say that simply because they didn't set up Btrfs right. Like, if they'd set up Btrfs correctly, this would be an awesome distribution. Now, it's probably still awesome, and you can obviously set up Snapper after you've installed it, but that's a big hang-up for me. Like, if I'd prefer them to actually just use ext4. Like, if you just use ext4, I wouldn't have this to bitch and complain about, and therefore we'd be having a different conversation. But you did use Btrfs, and then you ignored the fact that the primary feature of Btrfs you didn't set up. You didn't use Timeshift, and you didn't use Snapper. Choose one of those two. It doesn't really matter. Personally, I say you'd probably set up Timeshift out of the box and just have it there. You know what I mean? It's a GUI. You're trying to create a distribution that has a ton of awesome GUIs. Use that. But I don't know why they didn't. So maybe they have a technical reason for that, but I can't say as glowing a review of this as I want to because of that fact. But other than that, I do think this is a nice minimal distro. It does have Btrfs at least, you know, as default, which is good. It has quite a few different little specialties that they've added on top of GNOME, at least, that make your experience nice. Now, I'd be interested to try the KDE and Hyperland and Neri versions and see what's different in those. If you're interested in that type of video, you just let me know. But I'd like to see what is different there. But they've made GNOME quite good here, so I applaud them for that. Overall, a good distribution, and I do believe that they're highly active in terms of their community. So if you have ideas and you want to contribute or you have questions, they do have a highly active community, and I know quite a few people have used this and had a very good time. I had a very good time as well. I'm just salty about the Buttervest thing. So overall, good distro. Go check it out. I'll leave a link to the webpage and the ISO download in the video description. If you want to talk about this, you can leave those in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. You can follow me on Mastodon. That link will be in the video description. You can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/thelinuxcast. If you do support me there, you'll get a weekly exclusive podcast along with several other benefits. Basically, the podcast is just me sitting around just rambling for about 15 or 20 minutes. If that's something that interests you, head on over there, give me some support. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks to everybody who does support me on Patreon and YouTube. You guys are all absolutely amazing. Without you, the channel just would not be anywhere near where it is right now, so thank you very much. If you would like to support me by getting some merch, you can also do that. Shop.thelinuxcast.org. I have this awesome hat. It says I'm a Linux nerd. I'm assuming that that's true because I have the hat, whatever that is. So anyways, shop.thelinuxcast.org. I'm really bad at endings. You guys know this. So anyways, that's it for this one. I'll see you guys next time. I hope you have a wonderful day. See you next time. See you next time. I should say that a few more times. All right. Yeah, I'm done.